We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Tesam and Aleph and Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 39a. On the previous Amud, Rava asked, Yesh beggar bekever or ein beggar bekever. What that means to say is that generally speaking, let's say you have a situation of a Nara who is raped, and then at the time of the court case she's already a bogeres, so the halach is that the fine is paid to her, it's not paid to her father. So the question is, what happens if the court case takes place at a time when she would have been a bogeres, but it happens to be she has died? So in that situation, does the payment go to her father, or do we say no? Yesh beggar bekever. She's considered a bogeres, and the payment will go to her son, who will be yorish her, who will inherit her. And the Gemara now asks, Umi Ma'abra, but is this even possible that she has a child? Can she become pregnant when she's a katana or a nara? V'atani Rav Bevi kami de Rav Nachman, but Rav Bevi taught in front of Rav Nachman. Shalosh noshim mishamshos b'moch. It says that there are 3 women that when they have relations, they should use a moch. Again, that's using the pad in order that they do not become pregnant. Elohein, and they are as follows: katana u'uberes u'meinika. If you have a katana, let's say the girl's a minor and she's having relations, she should use a moch. If she's muberes, let's say if she's currently pregnant, she should use a moch to prevent pregnancy. And meinika means if she's nursing also, she should prevent the pregnancy. Rashi over here says, meshamshos b'moch mutter lehen l'shamish b'moch, meaning it's mutter to use a moch. Ve'enon kemashchiso zera. That's not considered like they're destroying the seed. Normally you're not allowed to do that. You can't have relations in a situation where you're making it impossible to get pregnant. But in this situation, that is going to be okay. And the Gemara continues, why is it that these 3 cases are exceptions? Katana shemetesaber v'tamas. When it comes to a katana, we're afraid maybe she'll become pregnant and she'll die. It's dangerous if a katana becomes pregnant. Me'uberes shemetasa ubrasandal. If she's pregnant right now and then she becomes pregnant again, so we're afraid the fetus inside the womb will become a sandal, meaning to say like a sandal, like a disfigured fetus. And meinika, let's say she's nursing. Why is it dangerous to become pregnant when she's nursing? Shema tigmol asbina. She'll have to wean her son. In other words, she won't be able to nurse him properly when she becomes pregnant. And now the Gemara continues, ve'ezu hi katana. Now what is considered to be a katana? This is a tosefta over here. So a katana is mibas achas esrei shana v'yom echad. We're talking about from 11 years old in one day at shtei esrei shana v'yom echad until 12 years old in one day. That 1 year period, that's the katana who uses a moch. Pachas mikan, but if she's younger than that, v'yesra alkein, or let's say she's older than that, meshameshes kedarka v'holeches. She can have relations in the normal fashion. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's Rabbi Meir's opinion. In other words, you see that there's no concern for pregnancy at that young age, as Rashi over here says, Pachas mikan mibas achas esrei shana meshameshes kedarka lefi shelo tesaber. She's not going to become pregnant anyway when she's younger. V'yesra alkein al bas shtei esrei shana meshameshes kedarka. If she's older than 12 years old, then she could also have relations regular. Shim tesaber lo tamas, because there, if she becomes pregnant, she will not die. In any case, Alma, what do you see from this? Bekatanos lo miabra. Apparently, she will not become pregnant as a minor. She yavu lichlal leida, meaning to say she won't become pregnant and will not cause a birth to have a tamas katani. It says she will die if she becomes pregnant. So in other words, the point is, how is it that she would have a son in this case? Because a katana, even if she does become pregnant, it will not lead to a child. And the Tosefta continues, V'chachamim omrim, and the Chachamim say, Achazu v'achazu, in both situations, Meshameshes kedarka v'holeches, she can have relations. In all of these cases, it's not a problem. Umin hashamayim yirachamu, and they'll have mercy on heaven. The heavens will have mercy on her. Mishum shenemar, like the pasuk says, Shomer pesoim Hashem. Hashem protects those who are ignorant, those who don't realize. So in other words, the Chachamim say it's not a problem in these cases to have relations without a moch, because the person will be protected min hashamayim. But in any case, the question is, how is it that Rava asked this question assuming that there was a child over here? And the Gemara continues, if you will say, Diabra kashi nara, maybe you'll say she wasn't a katana. Maybe the case that Rava is talking about is she became pregnant when she was a nara. Va'olida kashi nara, and also she gave birth. The child was born while she was a nara. Now Rashi over here says, she was 12 years old in a day. That's already the times of naras, and that's when she became pregnant. V'yolda benaras, and she gave birth when, again, she was still a nara. Umesa benaras, and she died while she was still a nara. Again, the case over here is a question of yesh beggar bekever. Hanami lasi, you can't say that. Da'amar Shmuel, because Shmuel says, ein benaras lebagros elashisha chadashim. There's only 6 months between naras and bagros. It's only a 6-month period. From the moment she has 2 hairs, she's considered a nara, the signs of maturity. That's if she has the hairs from that time and onward. And from when she has those 2 hairs, until she becomes a bogeres, shisha chadashim v'sulo. It's just a 6-month period. Masnisa de katani mi bas shteim esrei va'elech imiabra lo mesa b'mevia shtei saras kodem shetesaver kamer. Now, the Tosefta which said that when she's 12 years old, if she becomes pregnant, she won't die, that's talking when she has the signs of maturity. Aval kol zman shelo hevia katani. If she doesn't have the signs of maturity, she's a katana. V'haydin nakan minyan shanim mishum de bebotzer mishtei mesrei v'yom echad afilu hevia saras. The reason why we talk about this age, that she has to be 12 years old in a day, is because if she's less than that, even if she has the hairs, eino ela shuma, that's not considered really a sign of maturity. It's just called shuma. Kedamrin Mesechet nida v'kiddushin. That's what we say in Mesechet nida and in kiddushin. So in any case, the point is, so maybe you'll say the case over here was that she became pregnant while she was a nara, and then she gave birth while she was still a nara, and then again, by the time of the court case already she has died, but she is the age, she would have been the age of a bogeres. But that's a problem also. V'shisa yarchi mikiyol, that's not possible to give birth within 6 months. It's only a 6-month period. It's not enough time. V'yomar Shmuel, and Shmuel said, Ein bein naras lebagros elo shisha chadashim. The time period between naras and bagros, meaning the time of naras, is just 6 months. It's not enough time, again, to get pregnant and have a child. V'chitem, and if you'll suggest botzir hudaleka, that it's not less than 6 months, hatzveika, but it could be more than 6 months, so maybe there is enough time to become pregnant. Ha'elo kamer, but the statement is, elo shisha chadashim, means like there's only 6 months and not more. That's what it sounds like Shmuel was saying. And so the Gemara says, rather you have to re-understand the question that Rava asked as follows. What Rava was saying was, is she considered a bogeres even after she has died and the rights of the father leave? We're not talking about Yerusha of the son. There is no child over here. But we just want to know if the rights of the father are no longer. Odilmor, maybe ain't beggar bekever, velo paka'av. Maybe there is no din of beggar bekever, and therefore the rights of the father, they do not leave. Rashi over here says, upaka'av paka tviasaf, meaning the claim of the father is no longer. And so therefore the guy doesn't have to pay the fine, he keeps the money. She'in baldino kaim, because the other person, the other litigant, is not around. Uknas lav mamun hu lahurisha laavia betoras Yerusha kol kama delo gavse. Knas is not considered mamun that automatically it's inherited by the father betoras Yerusha unless she has collected it first. She hasn't collected it again because she has died, and therefore paka'av, therefore he has no rights. Maybe there's no din of beggar bekever, it doesn't take away the rights of the father. And the Gemara continues, Mar Baravashi boy lohachi. Mar Baravashi asked the question in the following manner: Misa osa bagros, when a person has died, does she have the status of bogeres? Oein osa bagros, or maybe there's no status of bogeres. Teku, and again, that we're going to leave as a question. Rashi over here explains, Mar Baravashi lo boy la boy de Rava mishum beggar bekever. He didn't ask the question like Rava asked, is there beggar bekever? Ela im mesa ben arusa mipaka ki bagros de mechayim olo. In other words, the question was, let's say she dies when she's a nara, does that undo it, just like if she would have been a bogeres when she was alive? That was the way that Mar Baravashi understood the question. In other words, he understood the question very simply, does the fact that she died, does that take away the claim? Does that take away the claim? And Rashi over here continues, Ulahai lishna de Mar Baravashi aliva de Rava. It's according to this version, Mar Baravashi's version of the question according to Rava, Amru la'el, that's what we said earlier when we said, Milsa de pshita leili abaya mi boy leila Rava, that the issue which was obvious for Abaya is a question for Rava. In other words, Abaya said in the previous Amud that the halacha is, let's say the Nara dies, so then there's no fine paid at all because the pasuk says la'avi hana'ara and not la'avi mesa. So there's no fine that's paid to the father in that situation at all. That's what Abaya said. And the Gemara said that this issue that Abaya said was a question for Rava. So Rashi over here is saying it's what we mean to say it's a question for Rava is in this particular version, Mar Baravashi's version of Rava. The ilu little-ish nakama, because if you're going on the first version of Rava, so there mifshat pshita leila Rava, there was actually obvious for Rava, the misa lo mifka, that misa is not going to undo the payment. In other words, what's Rava saying over here? Rava, when he's asking the question in terms of bogeres, in terms of whether the father's rights leave, that's talking about a situation where she is of the age, or she would have been the age of a bogeres. And so the question is it considered like she's a bogeres, and it undoes the ability of the father to collect? Udelo ki Abaya. That's not like Abaya. Calls man shelo bagar, because there, according to Rava, Misa would certainly not undo anything if she didn't reach the age of bogeres. In other words, let's say she would have died as a nara. So according to Rava, it's obvious that doesn't undo the payment. The only issue is, let's say she died and she reaches the age, or she would have been the age of a bogeres. Does that undo it? So in this version of Rava, in that first version of Rava, Misa certainly doesn't undo the payment. He was just asking again when she reaches the age of Bagris and she has died. Avol b'misa, but let's say it's just death. Kol zman shelo bagur, let's say she died as a Nara. So Palagade Abaya, it's clear according to the first version of Rava that Rava would actually argue in Abaya. V'yamar lo mifka v'chayev, and Rava would say it doesn't undo anything. So therefore, that's why it's really the second version of Rava. That's the second version of Rava, Mar Bar Rav Ashi's version of Misa Osa Bagris. Does the very act of death itself, does that have the status of Bogeris and undo the payment? That was a question for Rava, even though for Abaya it is obvious that Misa does undo the payment. And the Gemara continues, Boy mine Rava me Abaya. Rava asked Abaya the following question, Bo'alev inis arsa mao. Let's say you have a situation where he rapes her, and then she becomes betrothed. What is the halacha in that situation? Amar Lei said to him, Miksiv v'nosan la'avi hanara asher lo arusa. Does the pasuk say that you pay the father if she was not betrothed, implying that if she becomes betrothed at the time of the payment, suddenly the father does not take the payment? That's not true. The pasuk doesn't say that. So even though she's nisarsa after the fact, certainly the payment will still be paid and given to the father. But the Gemara says, V'lataymech, but one second, according to that reasoning, Hadatanya, what about the following brisa? The brisa says, Ba'alev v'nisis, let's say he rapes her and then she gets married, so liatzma, so then the payment is made to her. So there you do have a situation where something happens, she gets married subsequently, and she gets the payment. And there it's not in the pasuk, Miksiv v'nasan lavi hanara asher lo nesua. Does the pasuk say the father only gets the payment if she's not married? It doesn't say that, but it's understood that if she gets married, she's no longer in the reshus of the father, and she gets the payment. So therefore, it's the same thing over here, but not by an arusa. Maybe she takes the payment. But the Gemara says, Hachihashta, what kind of comparison is this? Hasam over there, Hoelu Bagros Motzia Merishas Av. Since we know that if she's a Bogeris, she's not in the rishus of the father. Vinisuin Motzia Merishas Av, and we know that in general, a married woman is not in the rishus of her father. So Ma Bagros Boleu Vagra Liatzma, just like by a Bogeris, if he raped her and then she becomes a Bogeris, she gets to collect the payment. Af Nisuin, so the same thing is true when it comes to Nisuin, when there's a marriage, Bo'alev V'nisis Liatzma. Again, if he rapes her and then she becomes married, she gets to collect the payment. Ela Erison, however, when it comes to Erison, when it comes to betrothal, Mika Mafki Mereshusa Da'av Lagamri, is she being taken totally out of the Reshus of the father? In that case, we know that when you have an Arusa, she's not completely out of the Reshus of her father. Hatzanan, we learned in a Mishnah, Nara HaMorasa, if you have a woman, a young girl who's Morasa, who is an Erison, Avia Ubala Mefirin Lanadora, the halach is that both her father and her husband are able to undo her vows, and that shows that they both have a certain element of Reshus. She's still in the Reshus of the father somewhat, and that's why it really was a question over here in that situation, what happens in terms of the payment. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamefata Nosein Shlosha Devarim. Let's say a person seduces a woman, so he has to pay 3 items, Va'ones, and if he rapes her Arba, then there's actually a 4th that has to be paid. And the Mishnah explains, Hamefata Nosein Boshes Upegamu Kenas. By the Mefata, he has to pay for embarrassing her, he has to pay for lowering her value, and he has to pay the fine. Mosif olav onus, but if a person rapes, there's an additional payment, Shanos and Asatzar, that he also has to pay for the pain that he causes. And the Mishnah continues, Ma bein onus lemefata. What's the difference between onus and mefata? Ha-onus nosin es atzar, v'ha-mefata ino nosin es atzar. Like we said above, the onus, he has to pay for the pain. The mefata does not pay for the pain. Ha-onus nosin miyad, v'ha-mefata l'cheshayotzi. The onus, he has to pay immediately, but the mefata, he only pays when he actually divorces her. Rashi will explain that. Ha-onus shosa batzitzo. The onus, he drinks from his vessel, meaning to say he has to marry her. V'ha-mefata, but when it comes to the person who seduces her, if he doesn't want to marry her, he doesn't have to. Ketzad how so? Ketzad shosa batzitzo. What does it mean he drinks from his vessel? Afilu hi chigeres, even if she is lame. Afilu hi suma, even if she is blind. Vafilu hi mukas shchin, even if she has boils. In all of those situations, the onus, the person who is ma'anis, who rapes her, he has to marry her. Nimtza badvar erva. Let's say there's a situation where she committed some kind of adultery. O she'ena ru'uyo lavo b'Yisrael, or there's some other reason why she's not allowed to marry into the community. So in that case, eno rashoy l'kaima. There, he's not allowed to maintain her as a wife. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, velosia leisha isha haru'uyo lo. It has to be a wife that is fit for him. Now Rashi over here says, ha'ones nosen miyad li'avia afa pi shakonsa. The onus, the person who rapes, he has to immediately pay her father, even though he's going to marry her. There is no waiting. L'cheshayotzi motzi, but when it comes to the mefat, it's only after he divorces her. The Gemara parach atu ishtohi. The Gemara is going to ask, well, she's not his wife anyway. What does it mean when he divorces her? What it means is that if he doesn't marry her, then he pays her. The halacha by mefat is if he does marry her, he doesn't have to pay the fine. That's what it says in the pasuk. However, by the onus case, in that case he has to pay, and he marries her, he doesn't get out of the payment by marrying her. That's the distinction that the Mishnah is making. And Rashi over here continues, Shosa Batzitzo, again, he drinks from his vessel, the person who rapes, Bechlisha Bachar Lo Lishtos Bo, with the vessel that he chose to drink in, that's what he has to do. Kolomar means to say, Al Korcho Yisena, meaning to say he must marry her. Kedechsiv Lo Yuchal Shalcha, that's what it means, he's not allowed to send her away. And the Gemara says, Tsar Demai, so what pain over here is being paid? Amar Avua de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, says, Tsar Shechavta Al Gabi Karka, there's a certain pain because he forces her onto the ground. Maskav lo Rabbi Zeira, so Rabbi Zeira asks, Ela me'ata, but according to that, Chavta gabi shiroin, let's say he forces her, but it's onto a soft surface, onto some silk. Hachinami de potter, would you say he's potter from paying pain? V'chitema hachinami, if you're going to suggest that, V'atanya Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, but we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says, Mishum Rabbi Shimon, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Ones eino mishalim es atzar mipnei, by a situation of onus, he doesn't pay tzar because, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video, on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis.